We do not want to be walking around with toilet paper stuck on our shoe or to have spinach stuck in our teeth. We want somebody to tell us. Feedback is a gift, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'll be talking about 3 kinds of feedback. First is sharing with people what they cannot see for themselves. Next is accurate feedback, like a mirror we hold up to people to help them. And third is a spoonful of sugar sandwich of feedback. Again, all to be helpful with people. First, we'll talk about helping people see what they cannot see for themselves. Now, you've all heard this story before, but listen to it now, thinking of the opportunities for feedback. When my son was a little boy, I took him to the circus, and we saw a big, huge elephant tied with a chain to a small pole. Huge elephant. How could that small chain hold it? That's what my son asked me. And I said, well, they started with a baby elephant who, when they used that chain and the pole to tie the baby elephant up, the elephant would pull and it would see it couldn't break away. As it got a little bigger, it kept trying to pull away, and it never worked, so that by the time the elephant got really big, the elephant was pretty much stuck because he'd quit trying. Have you ever stopped trying? Have you ever gotten stuck in your life? What does that have to do with feedback? Just like my son noticed that the elephant was stuck, wouldn't it be great if you were stuck, if someone would point out to you or ask you, hey, do you realize that there's just a small chain attached to a pole and that you really can break out of that situation that you're in? And hey, here are some ideas that might help you break free. Wouldn't that be a real gift of feedback? Now, before you give feedback, especially if it's personal like that, you'd want to ask, may I share a thought with you? And then once they say yes, then I'll be sharing with you later on in this talk how to deliver your message in a loving way with empathy so that the person can actually hear it. Here's the problem with feedback. Often it's delivered like a criticism. People are afraid of being criticized. People are afraid of being judged because most of us got big heaping spoonfuls of that when we were kids in one way or another. And we set up resistance against it. We can't even hear feedback, no matter how well-meaning it is when it's delivered badly. So we've talked about helping people see what they can't see for themselves. Now we'll talk about holding up a mirror so that people can see. Here's, I think, one of the best examples of that. Sometimes the person asking for feedback isn't asking very accurately. And the example goes something like this. A woman will say, does this outfit make my bootay look big? Well, that's not really an accurate question, is it? J-Lo has taught us that being big back there is not such a bad thing after all. So the question actually isn't asking about how big you look. It's about how good you look. Now, I would not recommend what I'm going to share next for the men in a woman's life to share with their lady. In fact, women shouldn't ask that feedback from the men in their life. They should ask their girlfriends. And then if a girlfriend sees this kind of a backside going on, she can share, well, you know what has worked for me is Spanx. Because what you want is a nice, smooth line back there. It's not so much about size, it's about a nice, smooth line. So sometimes people asking for feedback are asking the wrong question. And when that happens to you, change the question. Do you really want to know about bigger or about how it looks? Help make the question better. Now, when it comes to focus groups, and we're all aware of how businesses and politicians use focus groups, they can never give wrong feedback because they're just sharing their opinion, their 2 cents worth. And a person's opinion is always accurate for them. It's the truth for them. However, there is such a thing as bad or wrong feedback. For example, recently I gave a talk on the subject of how to look great on film. And one of the women in the audience told me, she says, oh, Barbara, you should use yourself as an example. You should go, oh, use all my suggestions and you can look as great as me. Well, I asked her if I could give her some feedback on her feedback. And I said, I would not ever do that. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. I think it would come across to my audience as if I'm arrogant, as if I think I'm better than people in the audience or somehow above them. And what I always want to do with other people is to connect, to communicate with them. We're in the same boat. I'm struggling with all of the things that I teach also. And so I softly suggested to her that that feedback that she gave me was not something that I would use. So expert feedback can be delivered as you should do this. How does someone know if they're an expert or not? Well, let me give you an example. I was working recently with Roger Haynes, filming him about his incredible project, Haynes Solar Cookers, which is .com, by the way, if you want to check it out, if that title gets you curious. He had been in Toastmasters for over 20 years, so I figured when it came to filming him, piece of cake. I didn't have to give him the tips that I usually do. I started filming, and I stopped pretty quickly because what he didn't realize, and what I didn't know he didn't know, was that it's different to be on film than what it is when you're one-on-one or even with a group. When you're in person, it's different than when you're on film. He was really surprised when he looked at the footage that we took and saw the difference between before I gave him some feedback and after I did. I'm an expert with those kinds of tips because I used to produce a television show. I am a filmmaker. I've made hundreds of videos. I've been on both sides of the camera. I know what works. So I can just straight out tell people, oh, do this. But even in that case, I usually don't say just do this. I'll usually say, oh, you might want to try this, because it is just easier for the person getting the feedback to hear and to follow through on. If someone isn't an expert, it's a simple thing to say, well, my opinion is, or the way I see it is, or you might want to try, coaching it in. You can even say, I'm not an expert, and I think maybe you could try this and see what different results you might get. In addition, there's how to deliver the feedback, and we'll come to that in a moment. So far, we've talked about helping people see what they can't see for themselves, giving accurate feedback, and now we're going to talk about the spoonful of sugar sandwich. Why do I say it that way? Because I don't want to be carrying around a sandwich in my gift box. As an example of this idea, Ben Horowitz, who's the author of a book called The Hard Thing About Hard Things, a book about business management and some of the trials and tribulations that the leaders of an organization come up against, he was being interviewed by Mike. And Ben was expressing, it's hard to be a manager because one of the things that you need to do is give feedback, sometimes negative feedback, to your team. And that's a difficult thing. Let me give you an example. May I, Mike? He asks Mike, may I use you as an example? So he tells Mike, in your interview questions, you might want to do this and this and this and this. Well, Mike was taken aback. And he said, you're right, Ben, that really is hard to take. He says, I'll be laying in bed tonight thinking, God, I suck as an interviewer. I don't even know why I'm doing this show. Didn't feel good about the feedback he got. And then Ben asked him, he says, and Mike, how are you feeling about me right now? And Mike responded without hesitation. He says, oh, I hate you. So how we deliver feedback is very important. See, most of us early on in life got feedback that was delivered as criticism, as judgment, as making us wrong. We ended up feeling worthless, less than, just not good. So to deliver the spoonful of sugar, like Mary Poppins said, that helps the feedback go down, we use the sandwich, which goes something like this. First, you give praise. To use the example of Ben, who was being interviewed by Mike, Ben could have said, Mike, thank you so much for having me on your show. I've been a fan of yours for so long. You've had so many great interviews. I wonder, may I share a couple of ideas with you about your interviewing? Mike says yes. Ben says, oh, well, you might want to do this and this and this and this. And before Mike says anything else, Ben continues to say, and you're so awesome. And again, I really appreciate you having me on today. I've always been an admirer of your work. That's the sandwich. First praise, then the feedback, then another piece of praise in that feedback sandwich. The spoonful of sugar that helps the feedback go down. So I've shared 3 ideas with you today about feedback. And let me now test the props and see how they work for you. First, you help people see what they cannot see for themselves. You hold up an accurate mirror to help people see what's going on. And you deliver your message with a spoonful of sugar sandwich so that it's easy for them to hear and accept the feedback and actually use it. And when you use these 3 ideas, I guarantee you will, with your feedback, you will be sharing an important gift with other people to help them improve, grow, and develop. They'll always welcome feedback from you if you use those 3 tips. And one more thought, if you ever see anybody with toilet paper trailing behind them, they want your feedback. You don't have to bother asking them. Until next time, this is Barbara Lorraine wishing you all the very best. If you like this information, you'll find more. Subscribe to my YouTube page. Sign up to get information at my website, theelephantinyourroom.info. Until next time, best wishes.